Alright, so welcome back guys, about your first time here. I'm Vision Hero Bunny and today is in our video. Today I'm been doing something a little different. I'm going to be doing a ranking video. Now for this ranking video, I'm going to be ranking all the would-be Power Rangers series finales. Now this is covering all of the episodes of Power Rangers that would have been series finales if it wasn't for the show being renewed or continued. So those episodes include MNPR's Doomsday, In Space's Countdown to Destruction, Wild Forces, The End of the Power Rangers, RPM's Danger and Destiny, and Cosmic Fury's The End. So I'll be covering all 5 of those and ranking them from worst to best. Now, this is just my list, and I'm sure you have your own list, but this is just going to be mine. So if that's something you're interested in, keep watching, because we'll be starting with number 5 right now. Now, coming in at number 5 on my list is MNPR's Doomsday. Now, the reason I put this in last place is for this plain and simple fact is, when you go back and rewatch it, yes, they kind of end it as a conclusion to MNPR if it had been canceled here. However, to me, personally, it just felt like a standard, Monster of the Week episode. It didn't feel like a big grand series finale. Maybe that's because of what we got later and how big a scale other finales have been, and what has been come to expect from season/series finales. For me, this felt like a very weak finale. I didn't really enjoy it. I understand what they're going for. I like the idea. You got Goldark having his own Megazord, fighting the Rangers. You definitely have high stakes there when the Zords are endangered and almost destroyed. I think they have a lot of promise there, but I think what hurt it was the fact that, one, in hindsight, it isn't the finale, so, it loses its luster in that way. But also, again, for me, it just feels like a regular Monster of the Week episode. It doesn't feel like a grand finale, which, in my opinion, is something you need if you're going for a finale. Like, in my opinion, if MNPR ended here, or Power Rangers overall ended here, it would have gone out with a whimper. People really wouldn't remember. I mean, who nowadays talks about, this episode, whether it be in series finale format or just talk about MNPR? No one talks about it. This episode didn't really have a huge impact on the overall franchise. I do think they did a good job. Like, if it had ended here, I think it would have been solid just for PR fans. But overall, I think it would just been a show that was forgotten over time. Like, you did end it with, like, Zordon saying they completed their duties and whatnot. And they could decide to leave or continue being Rangers, and they chose to stay. All that is fine and all. But again, it just doesn't hit the same like a series finale, in my opinion, should hit. My other big gripe with this finale is that Tommy is only in it as a cameo at the last, minute of the episode. Now, I know in the previous episodes leading up to Doomsday, Tommy had lost his Green Ranger powers, so he wasn't able to fight in that aspect. However, I wish they would have been able to incorporate him somehow, even though he didn't have his powers. We know since then, they figured out ways to do that with Rangers. Now that was back when, MNPR was brand new. They were just starting out. So, in hindsight, you don't look to expect them to do something like that. But at the same time, in my opinion, Tommy not being in the finale in some capacity, except for a cameo, was a very bad thing, in my opinion. That it just weakens it even more for me. They should have figured out something for him to do, and especially with him being such a fan favorite and a big part of the first season, I just feel like it was a letdown there. So overall, for me, I put Doomsday at number 5, just because I don't think it lives up to the hype and scope of our finales, and again, it just doesn't leave this big impact that so many other episodes that would have been series finales had on the franchise. Coming in at number 4, we got The End from Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. Now, I did enjoy this finale. I think it ended off the franchise on a good note. Even though we know in the next year or two we are getting a reboot to the franchise. So I think overall, though, this was a solid way to end out the series at the time. We got some good character moments from all the characters. A nice kind of cameo return from Zordon for Zato. There was high stakes with the uh, Morphin Master's capacitator thing. They had to stop that before it sent out a wave of pure evil. And I did it. I did like how they did like the counter opposite of how it would be the opposite of the Z wave from in space. You had the ticking clock with that. I know people weren't a big fan of how Zed was handled and defeated. I went in the middle. I think it was okay, but it wasn't great. I think in some ways they kind of wrote themselves into a corner with how they did this. But I was like, you know what? I'm okay with it. It was, they handled it best they could. You know, Zed is trapped somewhere. Okay. In a way, I think that the way they handled it was fine. I mean, kept the door open for Zed to return in the future, and it didn't fully destroy him. I know fans probably wanted him to become totally destroyed, but at the end of the day, I'm also okay and like the possibility of him returning in the future. So, I land 50-50. It wasn't great, but, it's fine for where we ended it. I also put this finale at number 4, just for the pure and simple fact that it's only been out for 2 years, and we don't know the impact of what this finale is going to be. We don't know what mark it's going to leave. At the moment, it's kind of controversial. It goes 50-50, but at the same time, I think that the given time it could change. Right now, I put at number 4 just due to the fact that we don't know the impact that this series finale will have on the franchise overall moving forward. But that's where I land on the end. I think it was a solid way to end out the franchise at the time. Yes, were there some negative things here and there? Yes. But overall, I did think it was a solid way to end out the Power Rangers franchise overall at the time. Now, coming in at number 3, and this is probably going to shock and annoy some of you, but coming in at number 3 for me is Danger and Destiny from Power Rangers RPM. Now, I can already hear y'all yelling and typing and saying all these things in the comment section about me putting it at number 3, and I can understand why some of you might be mad. However, I got a few good reasons as to why I don't like this as a overall series finale. Now, number 1 automatically off the top of my head or top of my list is the fact that at the beginning of the episode they mentioned that Venjix has activated the hybrids that he created. However, they never come into play in the episode. They never show up throughout the entire finale. It's just stated that they're activated, but they don't play any important role in the finale. And in my opinion, why would they say that if they're not going to play a role? Okay, Venjix does have them, but if you're not going to use them and make them a huge threat in the finale, then why? And I understand people might say, well, they don't want the Rangers to fight civilians and whatnot. Okay, yeah, but they have done that in the past. But, they could have been used in different capacities. And it's very frustrating that they mention that, but then never use it. Now, my second biggest issue, and I know a lot of people might be against this, is the fact that Gem and Gemma are killed off, essentially, but then are revived at the end in the second half. Now, this is one thing I hate that PR does all the time. They do it all the time. They did it with Beast Morphers. They did it with the Lost Galaxy range with Pink. They are known to do this, where they kill off a ranger, but then they miraculously come back through some sort of way. They did it with Zato. That one I kind of can forgive because it was established using the Morphin Masters, but I always hate in PR when Rangers sacrifice themselves and then they are, brought back to life. So again, that's another thing that annoyed me. I know some of you might disagree there, but personally, I just hate when they do those kind of things. And, it makes their sacrifice less, big. These characters just made this huge sacrifice. Only then, by the end of the second half, they're brought back, and it's like they undo this big moment that they had. And I just hate those kind of things where they, revive dead Rangers. And this just goes throughout any Ranger season. They did it with Mystic Force as well. That one as well I can kind of get behind, just because it's focused around magic. But with this one, it just drives me nuts that they did it. Again, I know there's a reason for it that's explained. But again, overall, I just really hate that they did that. Then another thing that definitely lowers it down for me is the fact that it takes place in a different universe. It has no connection to the main PR universe. Now, if it had connections there, I feel like it definitely could have elevated a lot more. But since it takes place in its own separate universe, different than the prime universe we had been following for 17 years up to that point, and it just loses its oomph. If it had been connected to the other seasons and other, Rangers around the world, I think it would have added a lot more, power to the finale. But since it was in its self-contained universe, it definitely loses points there. It definitely gains points to the fact that it had a big impact on the franchise due to the cliffhanger with a piece of Vendrix being left in Scott's Morpher, and that also kind of being eventually talked about throughout the fan base for 10 years, wondering if it'll ever come back into play. And then eventually it actually does come back into play in Beast Morphers. But at the same time, that also brings it down, because then it also kind of leaves it on a cliffhanger, which kind of hurts it as a series finale. This one goes 50-50. I think it's a good series finale, but at the same time, it definitely has some drawbacks. It definitely is memorable in certain areas, but at the same time, it does have its drawbacks to why I consider it not to be a great finale. But overall, again, I still think this is a solid series finale. Just it is hurt in certain areas by certain storytelling ideas, but also is improved in some areas by some other storytelling ideas. But again, I think it was a solid way to end out the franchise if it had ended here. I just, again, wish if it had ended out the franchise, I definitely think it would have hurt, definitely given the fact that it wasn't connected to the main PR universe. I know RPM's a beloved season and everything, I get behind that, but I just feel like as a series finale, I just feel like it loses its since it's not connected to the main PR universe that was established for the previous 17 years or 16 years before this. But again, overall, I thought this was a solid way to end the franchises if it had ended here. Coming in at number 2 will be the end of the Power Rangers from Wild Force. Now, this has got to be one of my all-time favorite finales. That's probably why I put it a little bit above RPM. This is just one of the finales I absolutely love. The whole premise is amazing. You got Master Org, who finally mutates into the real Master Org and takes on the Rangers. He destroys all the Wild Zords and Kite, and the Rangers are all at their lowest point. And one of my favorite parts of the finale also is the fact that it takes place in the rain. And, they have to all come together after hitting their lowest point. They have, no help, no aid. They're all on their own, can't morph. And they have to fight Master Org, at their probably weakest moments. And I just really love it. I think this is, one of my favorite, like I said, it's one of my favorite finales. The scene with him on the Animarium, taking on all the Zords and one by one destroying them all, just is such a heart-wrenching scene. And especially with Merrick and Kite after trying to take on Master Org in the Animus form, again, he tries to do what he couldn't do 3,000 years ago, and it still didn't even work. I feel like this is such a gut punch finale. Every moment, there's something more emotional happening. There's another gut punch. And that's what I always love with my finales. You want to have high stakes. This one has high stakes. And, every moment, like I said, you don't know what's going to happen next. And almost every next moment is more tragic or heartbreaking to the next. And I just really love how they played out the story of the end of the Power Rangers. Even the title, they knew it. At the time, they thought this was it. So I love how they went with the title. The one thing that this finale doesn't have that some of the other ones do is the impact. The impact of the end of Power Rangers pretty much is non-existent. You don't have Power Ranger fans talking about how, oh my god, the end of the Power Rangers was a great episode, it was a great finale. You don't really get that. It's kind of one of those finales that is forgotten about, and in a way, it could have went out with a whimper here. However, for me, I just think the stakes are so much high here, and it is connected to the overall Power Rangers universe as well, compared to Danger and Destiny, that I just think it elevates it more. I feel like, the Rangers are fighting desperately, trying to take on Master Org, and this is like their big final moments, and just everything just continues to go wrong for them. And, they hit their lowest points, and it just keeps getting worse for them. So I just really like that. Again, I just like the stakes in a fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, Destiny and Danger did have stakes, but I just think that the end of the Power Rangers, just the stakes went up even higher, and just the way everything played out, it just was like more of a gut punch, and you could feel it as it was winding down, as this is it. This is the end of the Power Rangers in a way. And I just love that. And the jacket scene at the end is a really great, and also another emotional scene where, like, their whole journey has come to the end for the Wild Force Rangers. But I also feel like it doesn't just feel like it's the end for the Wild Force Rangers. I feel like it also serves as, like, an ending point for the Power Rangers franchise overall. It's like an emotional moment for both fans and the Rangers in universe. So I really like that. I feel like it delivers on what it needs to be. And then you have Alyssa being a narrator and, like, doing a epilogue to what happened to everybody else after the finale. I just think they really did a great job there. Like, it had a great emotional impact. The stakes were high. The battles were great. The only downside is it didn't really have this big franchise impact, which is disappointing, because I feel like it definitely deserves that. And again, even though it doesn't have that, I think it definitely is one of the top tier season finales, and definitely is one of the reasons why it got the second spot in my top 5 series finales, or would-be series finales for the Power Rangers franchise. I definitely think it earns its rep on this spot, even though it probably is forgotten about, and a lot of the fan base might not agree with me. Now, coming in at number 1, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody at this point, is Countdown to Destruction from Power Rangers in Space. Now, the main reason I put this at number 1, for many reasons, but the number one reason is the fact that at the time, the show was on its deathbed. It was meant to be the final season. They wanted to go out with one last hurrah. Somehow they managed to pull it off, and, like, they were able to save themselves from being on the deathbed. I think that, in my opinion at this point, this is the gold standard for at least the Power Rangers season finale. I think that, there might be some that are better than this, but I think this is the gold standard. This is where you should be trying to aim at a PR season, if not series finale. They did a good job here, and I think that, they only had an hour to wrap up 6 years of storytelling, and somehow, with the show on its deathbed, they were able to do it. The whole season is amazing in itself that they were able to get it done, again, given the fact that the show was on its deathbed. The whole season was good, especially coming off of Turbo, which was a bad season, and they were able to pull off one last hurrah. Got the Rangers finally taking on, all the villains that they had faced up until this point. Well, it wasn't our main Rangers, but it was still, a worldwide event, or universe-wide event. And, you had everything going crazy. You had Dark Spectre, you had Darkonda, you had Ecliptor and Astronema. All these things going on, and all the Rangers trying to fight all these different things. You had the revelation of the Rangers' identity to Bulk and Skull and the rest of the of Angel Grove. You got Zordon's sacrifice and the Z-Wave. You got Andros getting back his sister, Corone. Like, everything that you could have wanted in a finale, they were able to pull off. Now, rumor has it this was eventually supposed to be a three-part finale. I always wondered what they could have done with that if that was the case. I mean, this is pretty much the perfect finale as is. I always wonder what could have been if they were able to get that third part, because I think it could have easily taken it over the mark of even above like A tier or S tier. I think it could have been like above even S tier. Like, this is like what you want in a finale for any kind of show. And, you know, again, it was a culmination of 6 years of storytelling, of seasons, of anticipation, following a season that wasn't very good, that people didn't really like, going from a season that now people love and is regarded as like one of the top seasons of the franchise. You know, you got everything you could have wanted. Everything was kind of tied up in a bow perfectly at the end of the season. And, you know, the fact that they were able to get it done in such a short amount of time, with the show on its deathbed, with a budget that wasn't that great. I'm pretty sure the budget was pretty low for In Space. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, they were like, somehow were able to make this season, and somehow it turned out great. I don't understand how that happened. And the season finale did the same. So that's why I put it at number one. There's so many reasons as to why I put it on number one. You know, just overall, like, the storytelling. One thing I did wish we did get a little bit more was the invasions on the other planets. That would have been nice to see. Again, we only had an hour. Maybe if we had gotten that third part that was rumored to happen, we would have seen that. But again, even with that being one of my negatives, I still very much enjoyed this finale. And I think with this finale, if the show had ended here, it would have gone out with a roar. It would have gone out great. Especially with how Power Rangers had been going for the past year, I think it would have definitely cemented PR as a good show, and one that was looked upon fondly from the 90s. So I definitely would put this at my number one. I feel like a lot of people would. Maybe people might put the other two in my third and second place as number one. But for me, Countdown to Destruction will always be my number one favorite finale for what could have been a Power Rangers series finale. But that's just my top 10. You know, I always like most of these finales. I think they did a good job, and for the most part, would have ended off the show in a good to decent way for the most part. Yeah, guys, that's my ranking for the Power Rangers finales that almost were the franchise's series finales. Let me know your ranking in the comment section down below. And if you have any other ranking suggestions for me, let me know in the comment section down below as well, and I might pick them one day for another video. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to get a big thumbs up and share. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Hit that bell icon. There's more Power Rangers content from me moving forward. And go for me on Instagram, Twitter, which are linked in that section of my YouTube channel. As always, I'm Vision here, Blind Entertainment, and I'll see you next time.